All right. The algorithm in question. Let's break down what the issue is and why it would be coming under investigation. This seems like more heat on Goldman than Apple, at least right now.
Absolutely. This card is run by Goldman, and it's Goldman's sort of entry into this area by partnering up with Apple. Sort of was trying to create this sort of very fancy sheen for a card, you know, and Apple was trying to get into this business. And so what's happening is a PR nightmare essentially with these algorithms. And it has a bigger question is, first of all, what is happening with all the other credit card algorithms, and also algorithms in general around healthcare, around real estate, around all kinds of results that we allow to happen that they could be discriminatory. It's been an issue that's been around for a while, but this really puts it into sharp relief.
It also really kind of speaks to the fact that, yes, an algorithm involves computers, it involves machines, but there still has to be a human being that's basically inputting the code, and how that speaks to what could perhaps be inherent biases or even just mistakes or unintended consequences.
Well, I don't know if it's unintended consequences. These are programmed by people. And of course, as you know, diversity in the tech ranks are pretty low. And so it's not the question that people try to. It's that the way these algorithms are designed is they're not as thought out as they should be. Everyone assumes the black box and the machine decides everything. But whatever you put in comes out of it. And so in this case, you know, what's really the problem is there's so many good examples of bad outcomes here, and they only grow as time goes on. And I think it should be extended out for lots of things. It's this idea that algorithms rule us, and as we get into quantum computing and everything else, we tend to rely on the decisions of these technologies that were created by people, and largely by men and largely by white men. And so it's just this thing we have to think about is how these algorithms go into place and how much weight they deserve as we rely on them more and more. And it's critically important to do that.
You raised such a key point here, and that's the idea that we rely on them more and more. I guess the flip side of that is, how do you counter some of these consequences?
Well, I don't, you know, that's the problem. I mean, it's a really interesting question. And the question is, how do we apply algorithms? What inputs go into them? How do we decide which ones to use and when? And when do humans intervene in these situations? Because a lot of these transactions are so massive. There's so many of them. The same thing with search, the same thing with all kinds of things. But in some levels, we could be making discrimination so built into the system that it's impossible to change it. Just like facial recognition, all kinds of in a lot of these areas, we could have come into a real problem because we don't know what goes in that black box.
So, Kara, I also want to get your take on Dara Khosrowshahi calling the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi a, quote, serious mistake in an interview with Axios on HBO. The Uber CEO called Axios an hour after the interview to express regret over that language, and later released a statement reiterating as such. Mistake in terms of the word mistake? I mean, is it just a major misstep? How do you think about this? You
know, I wrote a column about this week in the New York Times about the Saudis, and I talked about Uber. You know, they have a board member that's from the public investment fund in Saudi Arabia. I think it's fifth largest investor. Saudi Arabia has been a big investor in Uber for a long time. And I know that Dara is a very thoughtful person, and I think he misspoke, and it was a gross misspeaking. He did take it back, but it sort of gives you the idea in Silicon Valley, which I was talking about in this column, how easy it is to sort of take this ever dirtier money, not just this murder, which is reprehensible, but the spying on Twitter and all these instances of questioning where this money comes from and who it comes from. And I think that this, you know, Dara does not need this very bad PR disaster right now, because he's facing issues around the stock price, around, whether he can make an economically viable business here. And so he's got a lot of hard things he's dealing with, and it probably wasn't a very good idea to say it like this. I give him credit for then immediately rolling it back. I know they're dealing internally at Uber with this idea of so much Saudi influence at the company, and you know, thinking about removing that particular board member is being debated internally at Uber.